So I'm going to start with 3 thank yous. The first one is thank you for coming and staying, because I recognize it's at the end of the day. It's been a long day for everybody. You've heard a lot, you've seen a lot, and so yes, I really appreciate that. The second thing is I want to thank my parents for giving me this creative name that nobody can remember, but it gives me a lot of creative energy. I'm quite a creative person. It's really just who I am. So it's David and Madeline Davelene. Okay. So the third thing I'm really, really grateful is to be here. I mean, just to be here, to connect, to learn. Just what a fabulous opportunity this is. And since my topic is mindfulness, and I'll talk about everything from mindfulness to leadership to Vuca and everything else in between in the next 25 minutes, really just want you to ask you to please just join me for just a minute, really just a minute, and actually do mindfulness instead of speaking about it. So I just want to ask you, if you won't mind, closing your eyes and think of something that you are really grateful for. Close your eyes, think about what you are grateful for. Feel it in your body. Where is that feeling of gratefulness? And what is it? And slowly, when you're finished, you can just come open your eyes again. Thank you. We love talking about mindfulness, but doing it is sometimes so tricky, right? So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so let's get cracking. So, leadership in Vuca times. We spoke about Vuca in the L&D stream earlier today, so just quickly a reminder, what does it stand for again? What is the V? Volatile. Yeah? U, uncertain, C? Yes? And the U? Okay, so I'm not going to talk about that. It's actually quite an old concept. I didn't realize until I looked again at the HBR. It's really been around for a while. We can never remember. I cannot remember it. But it's really, a lot of us spoke, and a lot of the speakers spoke today about what that means and the world we are in. So I really have 3 takeaways for you. The first one is to give you a little bit of context for leadership, the kind of environment we're looking at, and really a glimpse for the future. Those of you who know me, I'm passionate about 2 things, in particular leadership and the future. And if you put that 2 together, I'm really in heaven. So it's really, what does that look like? How do we gear ourselves up for it? And we don't really have the answer. So one of the things I want to do is have a small session where we will be sharing some ideas. So all of that in the next 20 minutes. And then share with you a case study. I used to work at Alexion until really a few days ago. So I will share with you one of the things we've done there. But most of what I'm talking about is really my own personal views, and happy to share any stories that you would like afterwards. So now I want to take you on a journey where I need you to imagine. So I want you to imagine that you have just been promoted into the super duper fancy role that you always dreamt of, right? Can be anything you want. So imagine you are in this role. Now imagine you are now standing, preparing yourself. Tomorrow is your first day in your new role, and you're thinking about how are you going to approach this role. You're reflecting, you're planning, but most of all thinking about this. You're not really sure, and you want to be open for new ideas. But there are a couple of things that come to mind. So first of all, your team. You heard you have a great team. There's some dynamics in the team, as in any teams. You've heard that you really don't have that many people. You need a little bit more resources. You heard about your boss. You don't know your new boss very well. There's some KPIs, and there's expectation that the business will improve. So you are really under pressure from that. There's also in your team and in the organization a lot of people who are very passionate about the environment, and it's really something that's really, really, really important to this organization. And how do you connect with that? What do you need to? What is your role in it as a leader? These are the thoughts that sort of cross your mind. And there are many other things. Technology. I mean, maybe you are a bit nervous because there's some new technologies you're not used to. Maybe they even put you in a new country where you need to be, you have never been. That happens. Like, okay, we get you to move to to Boston. I was just speaking about somebody about that, you know, and maybe here you are in a new country, in a new culture. And so all these things are going through. So imagine that situation that you are in. So when we talk about VUCA, this is probably exactly the sort of things that cross your mind. So, and then you open up an email, a welcoming email, you do the thing that we all do, you go and you see there's from your HR manager, you've got this great article she thought that will be great for you before you start your new role, to learn about the things that she learned just very recently at a conference that she attended, and she had this handout from Deloitte, and they were speaking about the human capital trends that are coming. And so now you are trying to get your head around this, and you have always been a very proactive leader and always on the forefront of leading things. So you are thinking, how am I going to do this? So the first thing that comes to mind and that they're highlighting there is that in future, it's really important that leaders at the C-suite work together in harmony as one team. Now, if you have imagined yourself in HR, maybe that's relatively easy because you think that's what you do, but perhaps in one of the other C roles, you may not have thought about it. I mean, it doesn't really matter because you've always been leading your particular function. So working in harmony with the others as one team across functions is really a new interesting idea to you. Then this whole AI robotics thing, you're not sure about it. What does that really mean? It doesn't sound like not many people know, but there's some indications that some skills, humans will still be required. So thank goodness for that. So for now, you're not going to worry too much about that. The whole thing around society, as I said, in this company that you now imagined yourself is really a big, and it takes on many different shapes. It's diversity and inclusion, it's the environment, it's just everything out there as part of the whole bigger world that we are part of. Then you've also heard now contradictory things. On the one hand, you hear people want to, in your team and in your company, want to have careers, you know, classical careers. But then you hear now in this new article from Deloitte, they're saying, well, actually, that's not going to be the case anymore in future. People want to have experiences. They come and go. They just want to learn something. Well, honestly, you don't really know at this point, how will you handle that in terms of the talent in your team? The next one is the workforce ecosystem. So I recently attended also a conference where I heard about very many companies have a lot of volunteers as part of their what I will call workforce ecosystem. And that's the way the future will be. This is how it's going to be. You're going to have a small team and you have to somehow get your resources from somewhere else. The gig economy, millennials, Gen Z, workers who are going to live to 100, that's one of the other ones, how we're going to deal with that. So many challenges and things that you need to be thinking of. And then above all, you have this hyper-connected workforce. So while I'm actually talking here to you, some of you may be tweeting something, sending this into cyberspace. I may not even be knowing about it. And you know, what does that mean? How does one lead in this kind of environment when you are used to controlling things and managing things? And before you know it, you are on LinkedIn. You didn't even know about it, right? And then well-being. We started off this panel this morning. I was talking about well-being, so important, really beyond just an action or a strategy, but actually something people expect you to do. So as you are now in the, going to approach your new team, how are you going to do it? What are you going to do if they all want to have vacations, long vacations? I heard that today. I thought, oh, that's fantastic, like, how are you going to deal with that as a manager? I don't know, right? And then new rewards. So in HR, I was actually hoping one of my ex-colleagues would be here on the rewards team, but what is happening in that space? We talk about all these other things that we need to do, but how do we reward those behaviors, the new ways of thinking, all the things that we want to do? How do we bring that out and reward that in people? And then people data analytics. I did not attend that stream. I was in the L&D stream today. I'm not sure what you talked about, but when is it enough? And how much data do you need? And where do you start? And where do you finish? And where do you end? And as a manager or as a new leader in my new role, what do I need? I don't even know, right? So now these are all the things that I want you to continue imagining, putting yourself in that leader's shoes. And then this is a bit small. I don't want you to go into the detail, but just read some of the top things. If you now look at the gap of what organizations and research from Deloitte says is important, and in fact, how ready we are, you will see that there's still a big gap between the readiness and the importance of what we are seeing. So the future always feels like it's really far, it's in the future. But maybe as I've asked you to imagine the scenario, it may feel closer to what we think, right? It may even be you. So, this is the last. I don't work for Deloitte, by the way, but I did in the past, and I'm still a big fan just because of their thinking. They suggest that there are two powerful forces that will be shaping how we think about talent, how we think about leadership, and how we think about the future. Because all these things that I've just told you, these other 10 trends, it's really, there's just so much. It's this overload we've Kathy just spoken about. So two things, artificial intelligence and on and off balance sheet talent. So how, and I start with the last one first, because artificial intelligence, there's so much out there and people are still exploring, very exciting, by the way, but as a manager and as a leader right now, maybe it's still a bit for me, a bit in the future. But the real one is the second one. So in the organization I used to work with, we were a very small L&D and talent team, having to look after many different things. And the only way we could do that was actually to use different kinds of talent, you know, freelancers, gig workers, contractors, having very specific projects, very specific skills that you buy in so that you can actually get your job done. So that is really, really, really key for me as a new leader in my new role as I'm thinking about getting the job done. So on that note, I want to ask you just quickly, really, really quickly, and this is really hard questions to do really, really quickly, but just I really want you to share also as a community with each other. So maybe just turn to the person sitting next to you and imagine now, continue imagining, you've just got this role, and then you also heard that the CEO of your company said, well, you know, one of the things we need to do is make this business iconic. And it's like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? And what do I need to do? And how will I lead to create that? So why don't you just share some thoughts that come to mind as you think about these two questions. We don't have a lot of time, but I just really want you to start putting yourself in the leader's shoes and think about that. So just to have a quick discussion. Okay, I'm sorry to do this because it generated so much energy. So I hate to break the energy, but I'm hoping that this conversation and at least the thought process will continue, because I recognize that when you open this up, there's probably quite a lot that come out. So thank you very much for doing that. So let's continue on our journey of imagination. Now I would actually do have some answers which I borrowed from Tammy. Tammy, I attended recently a great talk by her where she's from the London Business School. Again, I'm not really advocating for this, but I found some of these things really useful. She had a couple of things, and these are just my top 5 takeaways from what she said. And she said it in great words, typical business school. There's my simple words. First one you need to do as a new leader is mobilize intelligence in the new way of working. So what does that mean? It means like you don't need to know. You don't have the answers. It's not about you. It is about mobilizing the networks you have, getting people connected, getting that information out. And your role as a leader is to actually create an environment where others can do great work. That's what you need to do. So that's one of the things. Something else she said is to get used to owning less. And I'm not just talking about outsourcing, but it's this whole idea of letting go. Somebody on the panel spoke about that this morning. We need to let go, and it comes into one of the things that I will talk about later on. But let go of control, own less. Actually, it's okay. And it's funny how, you know how it is when you let go, like suddenly so many options open to you. Therefore, you will have more networks. You can be more agile because you don't have this, you don't own it. You don't have to carry this with you, this big weight. You can just be more flexible, think about things differently. Coordinate more and plan less. I love this. So Tammy told a story which I absolutely love. It's like, I want to ask you the question, but it's really appropriate probably here in London. So think about maybe your mother, if she would meet another lady for tea, right? How would they go about it? Anybody? Just quick, come. How would they go about it? Even today?
They'd ring each other up.
They ring each other up, and then Kathy?
They'd say, do you want to? They'd say, where shall we go?
Exactly, and they set up a date. Okay, great. Now, how do people right now, the Generation Z that I heard about this morning, how do they organize meeting for tea or coffee or a drink? They sit there, real time, they say, I'm here, where are you? Right? Not like, let's meet. And that's how it is. And so this is, I'm just sharing this story because I think it's a great way of thinking when you're thinking about your talent. I heard today somebody said, why did Google build the head office where they did? You know, it's like you need to be there. You need to go out there, and or people need to come to you. So you need to think about that really differently. So next one is that you then become this talent agency, which I spoke about earlier. And by that I mean, you know, utilizing the whole workforce or the ecosystem of workforce, and actually become this like, okay, I need this, I need that, where am I going to get it? And that's what I mean by actually becoming an agency. And then really make sure that you have the right people to do this fit for purpose work. You have a particular project, you need very particular skills, that's what you need. How are you going to get it? And the last one is lead to create a context. So leaders, the role of leaders is to create context for their people. There's so much going on. You need to give it a context, a framework. And one of the things I will do is give you a framework that I think can be really helpful for leaders in this particular case. So now I find myself in my imagined leader role that, you know, kind of torn between I need to be proactive and I need to be reactive at something, because things happen, life happens no matter, you know, how proactive you are. You find that you're getting pulled by business, you need to deliver, you need to do things, and then there's your private life, and it's like sort of blurry. You are one person and you are, you know, getting torn between these two things. Business expects you to do things faster all the time. I mean, every time I think I've done a record, whatever process it is I need to implement, I seem to do it better and faster next time, right? And that's what is expected of you. And that's what will be expected of you now in your new imagined role. And then how does that contradict with slowing down? Because you sometimes go to, you do what I just did earlier on, you do a little bit meditation and you've got to slow down and speed up, like, oh my goodness, how do I keep this balance, right? And how do I ultimately do more with less? Because that's really what the world of work is expecting. So you find yourself being torn between these. And actually, it makes me think of how we used to do, maybe we still do, time management. Remember, like, oh, you got to prioritize. I heard some great things even today. And then I have a story I do want to tell you about time management on the one hand versus energy management on the other side. Now, that's an interesting concept. So, how do you manage your energy? In a day, in a week, in a month. So here's what's happened. So in the company I used to work for, we had the head of our regional EMEA region tragically lost her son in an accident. And when she was ready to come back to work, she came back to work and we had a meeting and she said, I have 2 hours of energy. How shall we use it? I'm like, wow, this is different thinking. This is different thinking. And that's what I mean. Like, how are you as a new leader on the eve of your promotion thinking about how are you going to manage your energy and how you're going to manage your team's energy, not their time. So, oh my goodness. And then in my philosophy of, okay, how am I going to make this all work? I got to the coffee shop, have my coffee, and I see this book called Grounded by Bob Rose. And I'm not going to go into that. Somebody spoke this morning, I think it was Sarah, about the different dimensions of wellness. And I want to make a link between what he said and some of that model. It's just top of my head, maybe some ideas to think about. I have another Deloitte model to share with you. I love models. So, and the reason I'm sharing a model with you is not just because I love models, but I'm hoping that this will give you some framework how you can think about this particular leader, that leader may be you right now, and how you are going to manage your energy and how you're going to untap the talent and unlock this potential that you have. So first of all, it's the roots and shoots model. I love it because it's so simple. Everybody can remember roots and shoots, and they can remember a tree. And I start with the roots and shoots, with the roots. The roots are your values, your foundation, your purpose, all those kind of things. And the shoots are really the analyzing, the thinking, the creativity, the experimenting. All of that is part of the shoots. And in the middle, where it comes together, is where your passion and your purpose meet. And that will give you the energy and you will know what action you need to take. Because boy, there's so many things you can do. So I have limited time left over, so I wish I can talk about this more, but you can really, this is very easy. You download it from the internet. It's written by Deloitte, and it's fascinating reading. It talks about how you can reconnect, rest, and all of that, and how you actually need to slow down to speed up, which I think we all know, but do we really do that? And so therefore, this is what I mean, is how do you, for me, this is where it comes together, your purpose, your passion, and then what is your action? What are you actually going to do? What is the one thing you're going to do, even from today, even from what you learned out of the whole day, right? And then I just want to share with you real quick a case study of the company that I worked for before, something we did. So we did many things, just like you did many things and do many things in terms of leadership development. And one of our colleagues in Australia, I was speaking about all the changes we went through, and I don't have time to go into that now, but I'll give you just some quick head-up figures. You know, 4 CEOs, 4 years, one restructuring every year. That's the kind of environment that I have been working in the last 4 years. And then what kind of skills do you give leaders? And I love this morning when the panel discussed, you know, what is the one thing you do, and somebody does only lunch, and you know, that's exactly that. It's not rocket science. And so what I'm going to share with you is not rocket science. It's just what are those micro, I call them micro skills or actions even if you want. And this is what we did. And what she did. She organized on a volunteer basis. So they had a leadership team meeting. They had a consultant who had mind tools, and really simple mind tools, but beautifully packaged, very nice, and explain what it is, how to use it, and what they will be doing over the next few weeks. So that was what you can call the overview session. And by the way, you didn't have to attend the leadership training. It was voluntary. Everybody went because there's just so much going on, and they really felt a need to actually attend the training, or learning rather, like that. And then what would happen is they would choose one skill a week, and I have some of them there at the bottom, like a nightly detox. Without going into detail, you can picture the scene. You say, okay, every night before I go to bed, I need to detox. 90 minutes before, no blue screens. Simple, one action, one skill. And so how this worked is like every week you will choose a skill out of the list of the skills that are provided, and you will actually commit to doing that for a week. Come back as a group, reflect on what you've learned and actually share it, and then you try another skill. And that's really how it works. Really simple. Really simple, and the most powerful, most impactful training we've had in a long time. People loved it. They wanted to come again and again. We didn't have to ask. We didn't have to get any bums on seats. They were just there. It was just fantastic. So really simple. It's not about despite all the wonderful things we've seen today about all the future trends, it comes back to the basics and to the real simple things. And back to what Kathy asked you right before the beginning of the session, what are you going to do? What is the one thing that you will be taking away from here? So I'm afraid I don't have time to ask these questions, but you can maybe think about it as a learning department or as a HR department. What are you doing to give your leaders the space or programs or whatever you call it to develop their shoots And do you give them the space, and how do you create that to make sure that the roots and the foundations are solid? So something to think about. I wish we had time to discuss. And that is it. So I end off with this one. This one final thought from me is learn to grow and not to know. Thank you very much.